Top of the morning or afternoon to you, as the case may be. Welcome to our webinar, 5 Steps to Close More Sales and Stop Leaving Money on the Table. It's part of our ongoing Tire Business Educate series of webinars and events, all aimed at helping you better manage your business. We've got a few housekeeping items we need to take care of and get out of the way before we get into the meat and potatoes of this webinar. My apologies to any vegans out there. First of all, webinar will be available on demand as well as email to all our registrants following the live event. If you have any questions, we'll be leaving about 30 minutes at the end of the panel discussion to answer them. To submit a question, you can use the console located at the right side of your computer screen. What you do is expand the question box, write your question in that box that says, enter a question for staff. Now we're going to try our best to get to as many of your questions as possible today. You can also submit questions on Twitter using the hashtag, all one word, #CloseMoreTireSales, or by emailing them to Christine Zernick, our sales director, at this email address, czernick@Crane, that's CRAIN.com. I'm Sig Mikolajczyk, Managing Editor of Tire Business. Again, we welcome you to our webinar. Okay, let's take the setup from here. You and your crew are busy handling customers, vehicles are buzzing around your shop, you're slogging tires from here to there, and the phone rings. Does ring, doesn't it? Because if it's not, I think you've got probably bigger problems. Nonetheless, so what's your next step after picking up that call from a potential customer? You get them off the phone as quickly and perhaps curtly as possible so you can get back to the tasks at hand? If that's your answer, stay tuned. You're likely losing a big percentage of sales, leaving them dangling right there on the other end of the phone. Our presenters and panel today will guide you through some simple steps, pull down more of those fleeting dollars, and snag those potential customers calling you about tires or maybe service work. Now, like everything else, there's a right way and a not so correct way to handle those calls. According to data compiled by the MOLLOY Business Development Group, nearly 70% of tire shopper sales opportunities are turned away every day. It's kind of a large number, wouldn't you say? Now, the other data point I'd like to mention is one unskilled salesperson, either on the phone or at the counter, can potentially cost your business upwards of $500,000 in sales annually. Those findings are part of what the MOLLOY Group found in a year-long nationwide study in which over 67,000 sales conversations were analyzed. Now, we here at Tire Business recently conducted an online poll asking the question, how much in sales do you think you typically leave on the table when customers call asking about products or services? Now, although our poll is not scientific, it indicated where some of our readers are at. 46% say they leave between 11 and 25% of those sales on the table. 19% said they usually lose between 1 and 10%. 17% admitted, we're not doing a very good job. We probably lose more than 40% and maybe upwards of 50% or more. 12% said they probably lose between 26 and 40%. And our last confident group of 6% of Tire Business readers boasted, none, we snag all of those sales. So good job out of you if you can get that. Hopefully today, here's what you're going to learn. How to improve closing percentages, 20 to 25% in one day. How to capture all your sales opportunities. How becoming a commitment-based organization can be a game changer for your success. and how to implement cost-effective call and sales lead tracking. First up, we have former tire dealer Dan MOLLOY, the energetic president of MOLLOY Business Development Group, which provides clients with the tools they need to grow their business and train employees. Okay, Danny, give us the facts.
Good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you are. I'm absolutely thrilled to be here and especially to be partnering with Tire Business on this webinar, 5 steps to closing more business and stop leaving money on the table. And remember this, Tire Business is the dealer's #1 source for news. I throw that little plug in there for you, Sig.
Thanks, Dad.
In preparation for today's session, I received a list of a lot of questions that everybody had. How to close more sales, closing appointments and selling over the phone. What about closing skills? What about converting phone inquiries? Dealing with price shoppers. Okay, one in particular, how to be seen as a partner in the customer's business. There were so many great questions. And all I can tell you is that you're in the right place. Okay? Hopefully today, I'm going to do my very best to share some new things with you that are powerful and effective. We're committed to helping you guys and gals. I'm 65 next month in April. I've been in the tire business, as Sig said, for almost 20 years. I've been in sales for more than 40 years. I was a partner in a company with more than 100 auto repair and tire stores. Here are some of the things that I want to cover. If you want to improve sales and stop leaving money on the table, you need to focus on communication. Communication is the foundation. It's the source of all results in our lives. That's my claim. In personal lives and also in business. To stop and reflect for a second, can you think of any result in your life that's not tied to how effectively you communicate? Any result, other than like breathing or heart rate or something like that. I'm talking about results with regard to money, fitness, family, business, community, all of it. My claim is this: the foundation for all human results is communication. Now, more specifically, since we're talking about sales, bullet point 2 here, commitment. Commitment drives sales. Another way of saying that, the only time commerce is ever produced is when people exchange commitments. Let me say that again. It's critical. The only time commerce is ever produced is when people exchange commitments. How? By communicating. That's how it happens. I promise to install the tires on your car today, mounted and balanced out the door for only $600. I can do it by 2 p.m. or 3 p.m. Which works best for you? Let's go a little deeper. I want to go a little deeper into the dance of commitment. Technically, commitment is a declaration in time. I promise to install the tires on your car. That's the declaration. At 2 p.m. or 3 p.m., that turns it into a commitment. Remember President Kennedy, 1963, I believe, said, we're going to put a man on the moon. That's the declaration. This decade, that's the time element. It's so powerful is the idea of making a declaration in time. It organized the entire space industry. I'm going to quit smoking. I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to get in shape. I'm going to sell more. One question, whenever you hear that, when? Most people I survey when I give talks like this around the country say they want to be powerful while they're on the planet. I ask them that question. The hands always go up. Who wants to be powerful? And my claim is that unless you become really, really, really skilled at making sincere commitments to take care of other people, it's not going to happen. That is the power move in life, making commitments to take care of other people. Now, and also the thing that's clear, and the reason we measure the closing percentages are low because this doesn't happen in commerce and business. It doesn't happen in the tire industry. It doesn't happen throughout commerce in general. Okay, so we'll look at that as part of the report we're going to give you later. But one of my hopes today, point number 3, one of my hopes, my sincere hopes, is that doing this webinar, that all of you business people start to look at your financial data, your P&L data, all the reports, the numbers, the statistics that your computers spit out, and reflect upon this fact for a minute, that they were all generated in the past. Every number was generated in the past in moments of time when your team was communicating effectively or ineffectively. Some numbers on the spreadsheet you want to go up, some you want to go down. The question, how do we steer the numbers? In the future, how do we do that? The answer, communication. You're going to hear people on this talk today speak about something we call a language of commitment. In a nutshell, what it is a model for effective communication that we share with people, we teach clients, etc. We don't have time to get into all of it today, but we are going to focus on, and I'm going to share with you later, on declaration in time, like I just described, which is the power move. Okay? And for me to keep a big promise that we made, that Sig outlined in the beginning, as a part of this webinar, later on, before it ends, I will share with you a simple declaration that will help you improve closing percentages and sales overnight. That's a promise. And I will share that with you before the end of the webinar. That's my commitment. Now, without further ado, I want to introduce my partner, my friend for many, many, many years, and mentor, Mel Austin.
Thanks, Dan, and thanks everybody for being here. It's really a privilege to be able to share this with you. So what I'm going to do in my little section is to outline the 5 steps to close more sales and stop leaving money on the table. As Dan just said, it all begins with communication, with language. And clearly, to have an impact on closing percentages, new actions need to be taken. If you keep doing what you're doing, obviously you'll keep getting what you're getting. So new actions will be necessary. And when we look, if you really look at communication, every action that you take in your life, in business or personally, always begins with some communication, usually one with yourself. Oh, it's time to get up and get dressed and make breakfast and get to work. And then you get out of bed and do that. So all action is generated first in communication, sometimes in a private conversation with yourself, other times in conversations with others. In the 5 steps that I'm about to outline, they all begin with communication and are implemented, obviously, with specific actions. When these steps are done in the particular order with full participation and commitment, these steps will inevitably help your staff to convert more inquiries about your products and services into appointments, thereby capturing and closing more sales opportunities. So, first step, step number 1. After trying everything that you know, marketing, advertising, hiring and firing staff, training programs by tire manufacturers, everything that you know, leadership at some point comes to the recognition that they really don't know how to grow the business to the next level. So everything that you've known about the tire industry, the auto service industry, you've done all that and it's not working. And what they come to is a moment in time when the leadership says privately and potentially to the leadership team of the company, you know what? I don't have a clue what to do anymore. I need help. I need help is a declaration that opens a door for new possibilities. That takes us right to step number 2. What's step number 2? Leadership must declare, take a stand, make a commitment to solve the problem, and take the necessary steps to do it. If somebody in the organization doesn't put a stake in the ground for resolving the problem, no action happens, same old, same old. So, at this point, an active search is going to be launched to find someone, internally or externally, who has the expertise, the knowledge, the processes and practices to provide solutions for the problem. In a sports analogy, this collaborator needs to develop, in partnership with the company's leadership, a game plan to fix the problem. Once that person's on board, plans to analyze and evaluate the skill sets of the company are discussed in order to have an accurate baseline of the current starting situation. This analysis addresses the level of proficiency and productivity of each sales and customer service member of the staff regarding their communication competencies. It's clear in the auto service industry that there is no competitive advantage in the products and services offered, because I'm sure that for the most part everything that everyone on the seminar sells is similar to what everybody else in the industry sells. Well, then you might ask, what is the competitive advantage? And from our perspective, the competitive advantage is wowing the customer by the quality of the customer experience that we generate, and generates the operative word here. It means we, the staff of the company, cause it to happen. We're not waiting for the customer to be in a good mood. We're bringing enthusiasm, energy, caring, professionalism, all that from the very beginning of the conversation. As this begins, the communication generated by the sales associates impacts how they're interacting with customers. Determining where your business strengths and weaknesses lie is critical for developing a strategy for solutions that will result in the desired growth and success. A game plan or a playbook is designed to set objectives, develop new standards for communication, and design the approach, the actual actions, that we call a structure for success. That's how the engagement is going to play out over time. When all that's been outlined and plans are made, there's alignment between the collaborator and the leadership team. Alignment is in place, and now we're ready for step 3. So the plan is in place. Leadership gathers the company together and announces, declares to everyone on the team, because it requires everyone's active participation in the program, the new vision, the direction that the company will be taking to grow the business. This conversation includes the nuts and bolts of what will be done and how their full participation, that's everyone in the company, is vital to the success of the endeavor. The conversation is meant to empower and enroll each and every team member in creating a culture of commitment within the business. This alignment is the most effective way of harnessing the bodies, minds, and energies of everyone in the company. And now we're ready for step 4. Train, coach, practice, feedback. Now we're going to move into action and implement the game plan by building the communication competencies of every staff member, by providing training in the new standards, and then coaching to help each person embody the new practices. In this process, in order to begin to master communication, there needs to be practice and feedback that encourages positive change by acknowledging those people who are working the program, and provides constructive, critical feedback that supports improvement with a continuous eye on achieving excellence. Excellence in communication, so there's a game plan and an approach of how to wow the callers, and everyone in the company knows it and can generate it. By the way, this process of coaching, receiving feedback, and then more practice is an ongoing process. There is no end game. This needs to be consistently monitored and move forward. People, human beings, learn over time, and it requires patience, practice, feedback, and perseverance. So now we're skipping forward in time. Now that the new standards have been taught, learned, and coached, the issue of sustainability, one of the more important things for every business owner and leadership team, the sustainability of the initiative is addressed now in step number 5. Once the basics of effective communication are established, leadership and management must continue to analyze and evaluate to make sure that the strategies and efforts that they're implementing are working. Why? Because they're there every day. Using call tracking measurement tools allows you to understand the progress being made and the areas where some strategies should be tweaked, and additional strategies may need to be implemented, changed, or eliminated. To best keep your pulse on the business, becoming a listening organization. What does that mean? It means listening to how your people are interacting with callers on the phone daily is essential. Here, management listens to how staff is interacting with callers as a daily practice that allows for the monitoring and the fine-tuning of their efforts. The net result of achieving these 5 steps will be that your organization becomes a commitment-based, listening organization. As the quality and consistency of the communication improves throughout the company, because your people are more competent at building rapport, credibility, and trust quickly, and the quality of the conversations they generate with callers, closing percentages will dramatically increase, and you'll be leaving less money on the table.
Great, thanks, Mel. Good topics.
Welcome.
They're good points. And you're so right. Listening and communicating with customers, staff, and yourself is so important. Next up on our first on our dealer panel is Chris MITSOS, who's president of Mountain View Tire in California. Chris, touch on that fateful call you got from some guy named Dan way back when, and maybe also talk a little bit about how you first realized your dealership had a problem, about how you couldn't believe what you were hearing on the phone.
It'd be my pleasure. Thank you very much, Sig. It's really nice to be here with everybody today. About 11 years ago, I was sitting at my desk and I took a phone call. My receptionist transferred a call and said to me, "Chris, your friend Dan from New York is on the phone." And I had a friend named Dan who was from New York, so I took the phone call. And it was Dan MOLLOY on the line. And the first thing he said to me, after I realized it wasn't my friend and asked him how I could help him, he said to me, "Chris, how would you like it if you never had to worry about sales training again?" And I replied to him, "I'm still listening, Dan." And he asked me, the next thing he asked me was, "How do you think your store performs on the telephone?" I said, "Oh, we're great on the phone. Are you kidding me? We teach everybody when they come in. We phone shop. All the calls get graded quarterly. We had the typical off-the-shelf program that was provided by Goodyear at the time through their Gemini program, and we would get discs sent to us. I'm sure some of the folks that are on the call today are familiar with what I'm talking about. And the calls were generally graded very good, and we thought we were doing great. And so I told Dan, "We're great on the phone, but if you want to try to make us better, I'm listening." So the next thing he did was he had me listen to some phone calls from an organization that he was working with at the time, and I listened to the calls before he began working with the organization, and then I listened to the calls after he began working with the organization, and I absolutely noticed a big difference. And actually, the difference to me was actually astounding. And so he said, "Okay, what I'd like to do with your permission is I'd like to mystery shop some of your stores." And I said, "Shop away, please." And he did. And about a week and a half later, he called me back. He emailed me all the links, and we listened to the calls together. And it was an absolute disaster. I was shocked. I was furious. And I was disgusted all at the same time. In fact, I think after about 4 calls, I said to him, "No more. Please, I do not want to listen to any more." So at that moment, I knew that we had a problem. That was my recognition. The recognition had to be pointed out to me that we had a problem. And typically, a call would go something like this: "Ring, ring. Thank you for calling Mountain View Tire. This is Chris. How may I help you?" "Hi, I'd like to get a price on a 215/60/16 tire." Our guy would say, "Oh, okay." And the next thing you would hear is our associate furiously banging away on the keyboard of the computer and then on the calculator, and they would respond with, "I have a tire starting at $89. The customer would say, "Thank you." My guy would say, "Thank you," and they would both hang up. That's typically what a phone call sounded like. And you're just not going to close business that way. And it was at that moment, it was the aha moment for us. We realized at that very moment that we had to make a change. And from there, my next goal was I had to convince our leadership team that we had to take a stand. And it was very easy to do, because what I simply did was I played the phone calls of Dan's mystery phone shopping, and then I followed that up with playing calls from the organization that Dan was currently working with that had been through the program. And they were obviously astounded by the difference, and we at that moment, we took a stand that we were going to fix the problem. And I can tell you to this day, the single most important thing we've ever done as an organization is decide to change the culture and be a listening organization. We listen to a very large number of phone calls that come into the stores, and one of the things that Mel alluded to earlier was that there was no finish line, and he was correct. There is no finish line. It's constantly a work in progress, but as we continue to work with our people and we continue to coach them, we continually see the results each and every month. Our year-over-year sales over the last several years are typically between 5 and 9%. And I really have to say that it's all based on the way that we answer the phones, the fact that we change the culture in our organization, and our people know that Mountain View is very, very serious about the way that we answer the phone. And if you don't do it the way we want you to do it, you're not going to be employed with the organization any longer. And the last thing I'll say about it is that Dan did tell me up front, Chris, I'm not going to get to 100% of your people. I'll reach about 75% of your people. You're going to have to make a business decision on the other 25% of those people on how you want to move forward with them. But I will absolutely get to 75% of your people. And he was right. He did. And he taught us. He taught us how to implement this ourselves. And we now, this is part of the very fabric that makes up our company. And it's very, very powerful stuff, and I really thank Dan and Mel for teaching this to us, and it's been great. It's been absolutely great so far, Sig.
Chris, about how many calls do you typically receive in a month at your dealership? And of those initially, how many of those would you say you closed on?
Well, we typically receive about 9,000 calls per month, and we know what our closing percentages were because we measured it. And our closing percentages were probably around 25 to 30%. And when we talk about a closing percentage, we're talking about there was a commitment made by a customer to come into our store. And when we measured it in that fashion, it may be made up it was maybe about 25 to 30%, Sig. I can tell you now our closing percentages are about 65 to 70%. Big, big difference. Is there room for improvement? You bet there is. But I like being at the number 60 or 65 a lot better than being at 25 or 30.
Sure.
Right.
Sure. Yeah. Right. Thanks, Chris. Great stuff. Next up, we have Rick McClay, who's owner of McClay's Tire and Automotive. He operates 5 locations in Northern California, has about 36 years in the business. Rick, tell us a little bit about, as a leader at your dealership, how you took a stand to fix the sales breakdown you uncovered, and how you built your team to fix those problems.
Good morning, everybody. It's very nice to be here with everybody today. I'd like to start out by saying my experience was very similar to Chris's, when we first started listening to our phone calls and the closing percentages that we were at, and we thought we were much better also. So, what happened at that point for me was I understood at that point, and I got excited, is, wow, there's a lot of room for improvement here. Now, and then I started looking at it as, hey, what if I could get our team trained better, close more sales on the phone calls that we're already getting and the customers that are already coming in. So, for example, let's say you're doing $1 million a year in sales, and you can improve your closing percentage on 10% of what you're already doing, well, you can add another $100,000 a year to your revenue. If you're doing $5 million a year, you can add $500,000. If you're doing $10 million a year, you can add another $1 million. So once I understood this, I was very excited, and I knew the answer was training our people and getting our people trained. One of our biggest challenge is, and always has been, training our people. It's difficult. We're, busy all day, taking care of customers, answering phones. We work 10, 12 hours a day, and then, the only time to train them was after work. We didn't
About
have
how many employees do you have, Rick?
We have 85 employees.
Thanks.
So it's, quite a large large crew. About 30 of them are on the sales force. So, what happened is, I looked at this and I said, we cannot afford not to do this. And the only thing that we have that's over our competition is us, the people in our stores. And I've always known making the people that are working with us better is going to improve revenue and bottom line. So, we joined with the MOLLOY team. We partnered with them, and the process that they took us through was just amazing. What we learned, what I learned, was incredible. It almost like rejuvenated me. It changed my thinking. I've got the language that I was never using before, which was just, a wonderful experience. The guys on the team, building the team, like Chris said, it was about 75% of the team that got behind it and got excited. And, I did have to take the stand, and I knew it, that, hey, we are going to be a listening company. We are going to implement a new language of commitment. We are going to implement new models and new training. And it wasn't 75% of the guys immediately got behind it. They were excited about it. And it doesn't happen overnight. It is a process, but I would say, our first month, 6 weeks into it, you could hear the guys, on the counter using this language, using this commitment, and they felt better about the quality of the presentations they were delivering, and then the closing rates started to increase. And part of the program with the MOLLOY team measures that for you. So you can actually see, hey, where the guys are scoring, where the closing is increasing, and you can measure the results. So, what we've designed here is we've designed a culture for excellence. When we get the new guys in, they're already training. They're training with the guys that already know the language, so they pick it up very quickly. Because they see that's how we do it. Oh, this is how we do it here at McClay's Tire. And they see the other guys doing it, so the new guys actually will pick up quicker on the new language of commitment. And there's also a video training library where they can take classes and courses that are very short to help them get into this culture. So, it's just been a wonderful growth experience for us, both business and personal. We love it, we crave it, we enjoy it, and we're going to continue to do it.
Great, Rick. Thanks. Sounds like there's a lot of material there that's provided, and as you said, training has always got to be the key. And finally, our last dealer panelist on the East Coast is Keith Nobel, and he's General Manager of Black's Tire and Auto Service. Keith, why don't you talk a little bit about how easy it was to simply fall back into the same old habits for your employees, how they typically did things, and what it took to break that pattern?
I'd be glad to, Sig. And again, hello to everyone, and welcome those that are on the East Coast and the West Coast. Our situation was very similar to Rick and Chris. But we took a different path, I would say. We did realize that we had some major opportunities in communication and phone skills and our phone sales. So it's a few years back, and we went through the program. Dan and Mel came, and we went through a pilot program, and we picked like 10 stores, and we went through and we did we did it. We recognized this challenge. We took a stand, and we declared, hey, look, this is what we got to do to fix this. So we went through and we did the training, the coaching, and the practice, but we failed. What we did is we got away from it, and as an organization and upper management and ownership, we failed in continuing the training piece of it and the practicing and the feedback, and we continued to listen to calls, or we had Dan and Mel to continue to record calls, but we weren't doing a good job of following up on them, and we fell right back into the into the same old routine. Those 10 stores that went through the pilot program, months later, we're right back where we were at.
Why was that, Keith?
We have to just make a stand and say, hey, look, we got to put a stake in the sand, and we've got to change our culture and how we communicate and our phone skills and how we sell on the phone. We've got to do it differently. So we reach back out to Dan, and I tell Dan, say, hey, look, Dan, look, we blew it the first time around, buddy. We as an organization, we are committed, and we know what we've got to do. So we want to do another pilot. We want to take 10 stores, and that's what we did. And Mel and Dan came down to our training facility. We had 20 folks out of 10 locations over a 2-day period, and we went through, and we as upper management and ownership, we stood in front of the organization and we told them, hey, look, guys, this is our commitment. This is our commitment to communication, and we're changing in our organization. We're going to change how we communicate. We're going to change how we answer the phones. And very similar to Chris and Rick. I mean, we were bad. We thought we were pretty good, but we were terrible. Okay. So now today we're in the middle of this pilot program, and it's going great. I think Dan, over the years, he and Mel, they've learned also from other organizations, doing the program and implementing it. They've learned and tweaked it, and I think it's better today on their behalf than it was years ago. But today, I mean, it consists of us, the MOLLOY group, listening to our calls as they're actually happening. They're listening to them. They're then texting and calling our stores and following up on the leads immediately, and they do it for us. If we're too busy and can't get around to it, can't do it then, they do it for us. They also, part of it consists of coaching calls where we've got the group divided into 5 groups, and there's 4 in each group, and every 2 weeks they practice. They get on a call 30 minutes in the morning before we open the stores, and they go through and he coaches and they practice. And I think that's the key to it, and that's where we failed before. Step 4 and 5 that Mel mentioned earlier, the training, coaching, the practice, and the consistent feedback. And then last but not least is analyzing it daily, weekly, monthly, and fine-tuning it. And that's where I think you make the biggest impact, and we failed the first time around. But Sig, that's I mean, it's going great now, and we can tell it. I mean, we're getting incremental sales, and we're getting closer to where we need to be.
Keith, any pushback from the employees, like, hey, we don't like this, we've always done it this way, and we want to continue, blah, blah, blah. What kind of reaction did you get from the employees?
Oh, yes, there is. I mean, very similar to what Chris was sharing with us. About 75%, they buy in, and they're going to be on board, and then the other 25, you got to sit down and you got to make a decision, or they've got to make a decision to either get on board or you got to make a business decision what you're going to do with those individuals. But the majority is buy-in, and they welcome once they listen to themselves. And they listen to themselves. I think that's an eye opener for them, and because they feel like they're pretty good. But when they listen, I think that really opens their eyes to their own opportunities, and it helps the buy-in at that point.
Right. That kind of back to that theme of listening and communicating.
Exactly.
Thanks, Keith. Appreciate your input. We're going to go back to Danny for a minute. Dan?
Yeah, first I just want to thank Keith and Chris and Rick, 3 of the top dealers in the country, just sharing sincerely from their heart. I really appreciate it. As we start the wrap-up process, I just want to share a couple of things with you that I think are mission critical, okay, and items that we promise to deliver on today. First, if you think about this for a second, if all the results in the business are tied to communication, which they are, then my recommendation is that you become a listening organization, number 1. It just makes sense. And you need to implement a call tracking program if you don't have one. The sooner the better. Football teams watch videos, baseball players watch videos, vocalists listen to recordings. They all do it on a regular basis, right? And to fine-tune what they're doing. They also have a model. They have a playbook. They have clear standards. And that's what Chris and Rick and Keith are talking. The language of commitment is a model for effective communication. Now here's the other thing I think that is really important. Okay, I hear it from owner-operators all the time when we have a discussion. They say, "You're right, Dan. Everything you say is right about all this, but we don't have time. I can't do it. We can't listen. We can't do this." And all I can tell you is that you kind of like Keith was sharing. You'll continue to get what you get. Your income is based on what your people are saying and how they're communicating. But everything rests on the foundation of communication. I just want to ask Chris again just to comment real quickly on, because out of all the companies that I've worked with over the years, Mountain View Tire is a full-blown commitment and listening organization. And I just would like him to share just briefly what difference that has made overall to their business.
Well, every time our business would take a dip down, we would all sit around and scratch our heads and try to figure out
why is our business down? And one of us, whether it would have been me or my father or one of our DMs, would say, "Hey, are you guys listening to your calls?" And as Keith mentioned, we tend to sometimes get a little complacent when things are going really well, and we would go through periods where we would stop listening to the calls. And when we stopped listening to the calls, we noticed that our invoicing went down. The number of cars coming through our doors just went down. So immediately we told everybody, don't do anything today except listen to calls. And the next day they would come back and report in that the phone calls were not going well. And why don't they go well? They don't go well because as we got complacent, so did the people in our store. And they need to be motivated on a regular basis. And it's the chaos of commerce that goes on. And Dan has a cartoon from the New Yorker magazine that he sent me years ago that just shows what a typical tire and auto repair shop looks like. And there's 10 or 12 things going on at any given time, and what suffers is usually the incoming calls. So as soon as we start listening to the calls and start correcting our people and putting them back on track, because they know how to do it. They know how to do it, they just get a little lazy. And of course, we do have some turnover. So because we have turnover, it's critical that as new people come into the organization, we get them, and we teach them the language of commitment as soon as possible. We wait till we have about, 6 or 8 new people at the same time because we have 30 stores, so it doesn't take us long to get to 6 or 8 new people. We bring them in immediately and teach them the language of commitment and how we want the phones answered. But we have to have this constant culture of follow-up. And what would happen after we would listen to the calls and realize we were dropping the ball and everybody would get back on the program, the lift in sales was immediate, it was noticeable, and I just can't imagine going to market any other way. It's the single most important thing I think that we've done in our organization, Dan.
Great, thanks, Chris.
Yes, I appreciate it.
Dan, can you touch briefly on that commitment and that phrase there that doesn't seem to make any sense, icky wit?
Yeah, I mean, the challenge is to become a listening organization, as we talked about, and the challenge is to have the tools to do that. So that's what Chris was just talking about, listening. Finally, I told you in the beginning I was going to share something very powerful and yet extremely simple with you that you can put on the court immediately after the webinar, both at home and on the job. And my claim is that it will have an immediate impact on your business, okay, and possibly in your life, like Rick was saying. 20, 25, 30%, possibly more improvement in closing percentages almost immediately. Okay, so pay attention to this, really important, okay? Your business exists for one reason, to help other people, because your customers have problems. If they don't have a problem with their car, they don't need you. But they do, and so they call on the phone, and they walk in and they tell you what they want. By the way, they already have a commitment. They have a commitment to fix something, okay? Important to see that. They have a commitment. So here's what I want you to try doing. In all areas of your life, I want you to start to declare icky-wit. I strongly suggest you become an I can help you with that human being. And that your company become an icky-wit, I can help you with that organization. And that your team declares it to every customer that calls and or walks into the store every day. In my studied opinion, A, it makes sense, and B, it will improve closing percentages and car count and overall mood in the company. No more pushback. Every call, I can help you with that. Every
Great.
request by a customer, I can help you with that. Becomes a mantra for the business. Okay,
Thanks,
so
Dan.
that's it. Thank you, guys.
I can help you with questions. We have a little bit of time left here, and there are 3 ways to ask questions. I'll restate those real quickly. There's a question box on your screen. Expand the box, write your question in there, enter a question for staff where it says that. You can tweet us a question using the hashtag, all one word, close more tire sales, or email a question to czernick@Crane, that's CRAIN.com. We had a question submitted, an interesting one, kind of plays with the times we're all dealing with in tire dealerships and selling tires. How can we overcome objections? When a customer calls and has a problem with either something you've said on the phone, this questioner was a little more specific in objections about higher tire prices because of Chinese imports that are cheaper. But let's keep it with, how do you overcome objections? And I just ask anybody who jumps in to identify yourself first so we know who's talking.
This is Rick. I'll take that one. What we like to do is we like to give our customers choices, you know, because you don't know what they want to spend or what they have in mind, or, you know, so, you know, we'll give them a price on a good, better, best. So we're at least putting 3 prices out there, and one of those may hit the money budget they're planning to spend. And then your chances of throwing the choices out increase the chances of the customer committing to you. And you can do that with, you know, brake jobs, service work. You know, you can do it with everything.
Great. Kind of a follow-up question for you, Rick, but also for the rest of our participants. How do you find time to train people, since it's so difficult during the course of a business day to work in training? Did you guys do it in the evening or weekends, or how'd you work that out?
Well, we actually did it after hours. From once a month we would train with Mel Austin from 6 o'clock until 7 o'clock. We would do it together in the stores. And it was very powerful, very beneficial. And then being involved with the recordings, you know, we could always go online at any time and listen to actual recordings of coaching sessions. And our store managers would, once a week, they would meet a half hour before work in the morning, and the group, the manager and the sales group, would listen to some recorded phone calls that Mel had done some coaching on, and in a half hour the guys could listen to 3 or 4 calls. They could discuss and give each other a little feedback, and then they'd start their day. That's how we did it.
Anybody else?
Sig, this is Chris. Fortunately, because our organization is large enough, we have the ability to train during the day. We find that it's so critical to get this done that we just pull people out of the store during the day. We'll start a training class. Our phone training classes start at 8 o'clock in the morning. We have them out by 11 in the morning and back in their stores usually right after lunch. And although it creates a hardship to the other people that may be working in that store shorthanded, we feel for the 3 or 4 hours they have to be down one person, that is worth it, because the increase that you're going to get in traffic count, increase you're going to get in sales is worth 3 or 4 hours sacrifice that you may have to make in a store on a once a month or a once a quarter basis.
You know, Sig, we take the same approach as Chris has there. We actually built a training center, and we're constantly doing training, whether it's TIA, whether it's sales. I mean training. We're just constantly doing training, and we try to do the majority of ours during the day. And to mirror what Chris is saying, we're up to 36 locations and 4 warehouses. So, and we're spread out all over North Carolina predominantly, and a good piece of South Carolina. And but our experience has been in afternoons after work. Most of them are ready to go home, and after a long day, that we sort of lose them after about an hour in the afternoon. And so we try to keep our training, you know, in during the day.
And how do the employees react to that? They feel like it's pulling them away from a job, and then they're going to be behind, or are they?
Well, no, we haven't had a lot of pushback on that, because we just you know, we share our thoughts with them and our reasoning and why we think that what we're, you know, the approach that we're taking is you know, is a better fit for our organization, and we've had great buy-in with that.
Yeah.
What participants, what are the pros and cons? One of our people who tuned in is asking, what are the pros and cons of doing a call center to handle customer calls as opposed to, you know, somebody in shop?
That's a great question. This is Chris. I'll take the first crack at it. We actually put in a call center probably 7 or 8 years ago. And the thing with the call center is you have to have your best on the phone that work on, that take the calls. You certainly don't want your worst people, you know, that are on the phones call center. And we did that, and we did it pretty successfully for probably about 18 months to 24 months. But what begins to happen is you miss the presence of those people in your retail store. And our leadership team just couldn't live with the idea of having 3 of the best people in the organization on the phone, not working in a store day in and day out and just working in the call center. And for that reason, we ultimately decided to close the call center down and send all the calls back to the stores. But I think it's a personal decision. I think it's based on what your needs are as an organization. But our experience with it was you got to have your best people, and when you have your best people, that means they're not working in one of your stores.
Anybody else have a similar story to Chris, or that has a?
Yeah, this is Dan. I've done a lot of work on planning and implementing. I worked with Chris on that project as well. And well, you know, inside the stores is very chaotic. And if you look at an organization like Mountain View or Black's or McClay's, there's thousands and thousands of calls. And if you take those and move that chaos into a call center, now you've got a chaotic call center. So you have to be very careful how you design it. You know, if you really want to impact the organization, we have you've heard Keith talking about Sales Max Plus, which is another way of parsing out the sales opportunities. But that's for another whole discussion. But there are other ways of doing it.
Yeah. We got a great question here, and it's got a bit of a southern twang to it. Someone wrote in, what things do you all do to motivate employees?
Well, we start with a baseball bat and a golf club. And
Keith, maybe as a token southerner here, you'd like to jump in on that?
Hey, we'll take a crack at it. You know, we stay very involved in the communities, and whether it's collegiate baseball, whether it's summer wooden back league baseball, whether it's semi-pro hockey, but whatever venues we have going on in our communities, we try to help sponsor those activities. But then also we're consistently doing Black's Tire Nights, whether it's at a baseball game, whether it's at we just did one this past Friday night at a hockey game, a minor league hockey game, and we had 250 participants. But you know, so we reach out in the community and try to involve whatever kind of venues are going on, whether it's festivals, sporting activities, whether it's dirt track racing, whether it's whatever may draw a crowd. We try to be a part of that and work a deal and on sponsorship where we part of our deal is we get tickets and we allow our employees and their families and their friends to go and be a part of whatever those events are.
This is Chris. I believe there are two ways to motivate people. One is financial and the other one is praise and recognition. You have to figure out which one of the two kinds of people you might be dealing with, because not everybody is motivated by money and not everybody is motivated by recognition or praise. They'd rather have the money. So once you determine which one of those two things describes or is apropos for the person you're trying to motivate, that's what you do. If they're a praise and recognition person, that's what you do. And if they're motivated by money, we tie whatever we're trying to sell or however, whatever levels we're trying to get to, we incentivize purely with money, cash in the pocket. And those are the two ways that we found over 28 years of motivating people.
Yeah. Thanks, Chris. One last thing, and this kind of will play back to Dan and his closing. Where can I hear some of the best phone conversations that relate to automotive sales and share them with my staff? Danny, what are our webinar attendees going to get today?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You've got the last slide there, Sig?
Yep.
Yeah, so for everybody that participated and came to the webinar, we really appreciate it. We're going to send out by email the comprehensive tire industry study that we completed all of last year, 67,000 calls filled with statistics about closing percentages that I think will be very revealing for you, okay? Secondly is the 5 steps to closing more sales that Mel went over. That'll be emailed out in a wonderful PDF. And then we have other newsletters and educational material that we'll be sending out to everybody too. So thank you.
Great. Well, we're at the end of our webinar. We'd like to thank our webinar sponsor, MOLLOY Business Development Group, all our dealer participants, and all of you who tuned in to listen to our webinar on the 5 steps to close more sales and stop leaving money on the table. Now, we hope you take something away from all that we've kicked around here in the last hour or so. And remember, you don't have to leave sales dangling on the other end of the phone line. However you approach it, take some concrete steps to see more financial success for your dealership. You can do it. Thanks, everybody. Hope you have a great selling day.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.